Our lead situation in this section of Philadelphia has been historic. There's been lead factories, lead processing plants here for a century or more. They're not here now. However, with the recent increase in construction in this district, particularly the southern part of my district, where the housing market is booming, there's construction on every other block. The dust has created another health hazard that's been indicated in an inquiry report on a pretty intensive testing on soil, on the dust on playgrounds, dust on cars, and the dust on people's front steps. So much so that there's an organization that we'll hear from in a little while called Get the Lead Out in the River Wards. A pretty sophisticated group. They're on a very deliberate and comprehensive mission to, number one, identify the problem. So we're here at Aramingo and Huntington, which has been ground zero for lead manufacturing and lead processing for the better part of a century. And I'm here with Donna Cooper, who in her day job is with PCCY, but is also the leader and very active in Get the Lead Out, the River Wards, which is the organization that I mentioned earlier. It's really been a sophisticated group to try to get a handle on this lead problem. Donna, you grew up here, you've lived here for a long time. Give us some perspective of really the historical problem with lead in this area.
Well, where we're standing today was the largest lead smelter in Philadelphia. It was J.T. Lewis originally in the early 1800s, and all the way through 1996 they were making lead products. Lead paint, Dutch boy paints, lead toys, lots of lead. And so since it was the biggest smelter and it had emissions going actually right where we're standing, there's a probability there's a lot of lead left in the neighborhood, even though in '96 it was shut down as a Superfund site. And the EPA cleaned the area where the plant was, but the residue of lead remains, and so does all the lead paint that was used in everybody's houses in those days.
And they've brought in experts in the field, every type of expert that Philadelphia can muster, to describe the problem, describe the damage that could be done to a young child, and what we can do about it.
I'll tell you that getting the lead out of the river wards is really led by some mothers and fathers who have been finding that their children are testing really high for lead. So just to put it in perspective, if your kid tests like over 5 parts per billion, that's a problem. In fact, anything over 0 is a problem. But we've sort of gotten it down considerably. And still very few kids test positive for lead, but when you're a parent and your kid tests positive for lead, you're concerned. And these parents came together and said, what's going on? Because they'd already removed the lead paint from their homes, but still their kids were being poisoned. And so when they looked around, an old industrial neighborhood, it's going to have other stuff. And they're like, we got to do more than paint. We got to think about what's happened in demolition. We got to think about what's happened in excavation, and we got to know if there's a water problem. Now, so far we haven't found water to be a big issue here, but certainly dust from demolition and dust in the summer that comes up from the soils is going to have old lead residue in it because the houses had lead paint. And whether it was Anzon or the paint, the fact is there's still too much lead here. And so what we're trying to do is get better demolition standards so the dust is contained, get contractors to spray water and require that they do it when they're demolishing so the dust doesn't fly around so much. And we've got to figure out whether there's an excavation issue here or not.
Legislatively, though, as you know, trying to do a statewide piece of legislation, even if it's just for Philly, is a little complicated. So how do we, put the burden on builders to do this more correctly without putting a burden on builders that the soil is pristine, it's never been touched by anyone but nature. But we're working on that. I think we can develop a set of guidelines for people to test. Certainly to keep that dust under control. I mean, that's a very easy solution.
People have been pretty concerned when they've heard kids testing high. What do they need to do? So actually it's been quite a constructive experience. And then I think where people are a little concerned is they want more answers. They want to know, if there's lead in my soil, what should I do? If there's lead coming from a contractor that's not cooperative, what do I do? And the city does have an air management office that people can call, and the city will come out. but we need to sort of make this much wider known, and we need to do more to control the demolition
And
standards.
so if someone's listening to this, what would you suggest they do? Maybe give us the website where they can get on to find out what's going on in the neighborhood?
So if it's these days it's a Facebook page, and so there's a Facebook page, River Wards Get the Lead Out. Go on there, there's questions and answers, there's the summary of our meetings. We had a meeting last night, 50, 60 people were there to learn about what's going on about lead in the soil. We're gonna have another one about demolition and excavation, probably in early September. And we wanna continue to meet with the city and the state to think about, is there something in the construction code that we need to deal with? That's state. Is there something in the Philadelphia code we need to deal with at the L&I or license and inspection? That's local. And ultimately, I will tell you, the biggest problem is still lead paint, and we got to figure out a way to pay to get the paint out of these homes. And so there's still a big question up in the air from everybody is, where are the resources going to come to clean up all this lead?
Should have mentioned Facebook first. My son will be mad at me. My son works for Facebook. I didn't bring that
Go
up.
on Facebook
Yeah,
Facebook.
sorry,
River
Sean,
Wards,
Facebook.
Get the lead out.
Well, and as you know, we are going to look at it from a statewide perspective, hopefully get some state officials down here and some hearings.
Well, and Representative, I got to tell you, the highest hot spots for lead in the state, Allentown. Highest rate of children being poisoned by lead. Up in Center County, up in Elk County, very high rates of children being poisoned by lead. So this is not a uniquely Philadelphia problem, and it may be because we had a smelter here that we're kind of in a hot spot in Philly, but across this state, lead is a real problem, and it does mostly emanate from paint, and so we need to think about how to make that, how to solve that for families. Because I think when a kid gets lead poisoned, it costs us over their lifetime. Special ed, incarceration. They find that guys who are in jail had high lead levels as kids. We know it's an indicator for special ed. So if it's solvable, get the lead out of the homes, we avoid all those costs.
Well, Representative O'Brien and I will be trying to engage other members to get their interest, particularly the committee that oversees this, the Environmental Protection Committee.
That's great.
So we're hoping to be down here, and hopefully
That'd be great.
we can get your organization
Yes,
involved as well.
absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for
coming out.